the biggest picture aspect, this is our website, regeneration.us. You can find this just by clicking on the programs and here. So there's this global, in the shortest possible explanation of what we're trying to do, we're trying to modify the carbon markets to function within cities so that we can measurably finance and implement local climate action in cities. So in this global review of climate action plans that's peer reviewed, it basically says that the weakest link is the financing and measurement of these climate action plans. And so we've developed what we feel like is a workable solution to this after about a year of studying. And our thesis really centers on, what is the most effective way to self-organize around action in the real world? Everything that I have in my house and on my body has got itself into place through a marketplace. And that is what we're suggesting is the best way to make this happen. Some of the big questions are, how do we pay for it? How do we coordinate multiple workforces across entities? How do we measure it in a way that builds trust? How do we verify climate outcomes? And what type of human culture and leadership is required? So obviously, economics 101, a marketplace requires buyers and sellers. And so we've been going down the rabbit hole on both of those simultaneously, because we can't just develop the supply of a climate action credit. We need to make sure that there are buyers. And so on the buyer side, I'll start with that. We've developed this program called Carbon Positive KC. And as of today, we have 54 customers. And the way it works is we give people a free carbon inventory. We literally measure, we ask them all the questions that they have to go dig for, like gas bill, electricity, how many times do they fly, what type of, diet do they have through a Berkeley tool. And we reflect back to them basically a personalized footprint. And we say, well, you can, this equates to this many trees being planted. You can go do that. Or you can take responsibility and offset today by buying and joining our club. And we're a club of essentially a group of citizens that are taking personal responsibility for their climate. And so then we come and we deliver an amazing sign, and we shake their hand, and we get them excited. And like I said, so far we have 54 customers. And then we go and we buy a portfolio mix of projects. So at the moment, there's no supply in Kansas City. There's literally no carbon credit in Kansas City. So we go and we buy a portfolio mix. Why a portfolio mix? Because not all carbon credits are created equal. I kind of like to talk about it like you can go shopping for your groceries at Whole Foods. You can go to Target and Walmart. You can go to Aldi, and they're all at different price points. Like there's a Whole Foods, which is like $40 to $50 a ton, which would be like the city forest credit. Whereas a lot of these international ones are, from the US at least, are much cheaper, more like $5. And so we're buying all of them and coming up with a per ton price, which makes it affordable for a household to say, okay, I'm going to spend $25 to $100 a month as a subscription. And so far, all 54 customers are buying. I mean, it's a subscription every month. And so then we go to Regen Network and we buy those credits that we've kind of put through our filter of the highest quality credits that we want. But it's important, what I was kind of saying earlier, is that we're saying that these are, third party certified. So we publish everything kind of very transparent of like, how many do we need to purchase? Because every month we're offsetting them again, basically. And so we have I think it's around $20,000 that we've in revenue to date, if you calculate it from an annual basis of what their monthly subscription is. So we haven't realized all that, but it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And so what we're trying to do is tell the world in Kansas City about this. And we can do individuals, we can do their entire household, and we can do businesses. And we're just finishing our first business. So that's on the supply side. On the I'm sorry, that's on the demand side. On the supply side, here I have version 0.4 of our credit. And, it's long and there's a lot of, interesting information and formulas here. But we go into answering some of those questions that I posed earlier of, how do we overcome the bottleneck of financing and implementation at the hyperlocal level? And, kind of like, what are the challenges of eco credits that we have to overcome in cities? Like carbon tunnel vision. There's a lot of mistrust right now. There's not one single instrument that is locally supported. Most project developers in carbon markets are going for large acreage sites, whereas in cities, we don't really have that. We have very small sites. So it's a different context. And, ultimately carbon is just a math where we've converted multiple types of gases into one gas. And carbon is not a holistic approach to climate action, because you can have, for example, vulnerabilities like excessive heat, and you can reduce that vulnerability without impacting carbon at all. So risk reduction and adaptation don't always align with emission reducing approaches. So it's kind of like, oh, and by the way, like you can have the whole system and it can pencil out from like the technology and the system, but there's this massive thing about human problem, right? It's really about human culture. Human culture is what's going to drive all this, not just the fact that you have a system that works, because people can, in politicians and bureaucrats, we've seen them side rail new technologies and ideas just because of their nature. And so with our pilots, we are fully funding the idea is to jumpstart this system. And again, I'd say there's a lot here. And we have examples, how we're going to govern the system, what are the risks, how do we value an eco credit, the time value of carbon, and aligning with Kansas City leadership. Ideally, we would take the climate action plan that's already been written. It's an unfunded liability, meaning it's a wish list of things that we want to fund that we haven't funded. And so, but every single one of those actions in that climate action plan has a cost of services rendered in a marketplace. And every single one of them has a GHG or vulnerability impact in terms of creating a better state for the ecological reality that we're in. So you can imagine taking all those services rendered and the pro rata of the GHG impact and summing them all together. Let's say it's $1 billion. That $1 billion is the climate action credit bank. And then if we can get the Kansas City leadership to buy into this as like, if you're doing climate action in this city, you're going through this system, then all the companies and individuals have that credibility and cover to buy this outcome. This is outcome-based financing. And most outcome-based financing are like large bespoke deals, like $100 million bond. But what we're talking about here is a market that has a high density and throughput of small transactions. And so what I see is an entire gig economy developing of project developers, gig economy workers, people who take their land and know that now somebody can do something with it and staking it, people putting bounties up. And so suddenly there's like this self-organizing market, just like everything else in our houses and on our bodies, in the realm of climate action. And the last thing I'll say is, oh, by the way, the White House is trying to figure out how to do this too in their national strategy on environmental economic accounting. I actually went to the White House, met a lot of those people. I've been responding to their registries and we've been gathering people to respond. And so I have all the commentary here. And ultimately what it means is if they put nature on the nation's balance sheet, it'll mean that these accounts will be the most undervalued that they'll ever be because of the state of nature, that it's currently so unhealthy. And so there's these new concepts that are emerging, like natural asset companies going on the stock exchange. We're in a very special moment right now where, and the most important thing I would say is the data for us. So in terms of the data, I feel like we're leapfrogging right now from a moment whenever we had, think like a gas company or electricity company, where you have like the utility. We need that piping for data. So I think about this digital infrastructure utility network, and we're moving from a 50-page document verified by a PhD to a real-time data stream of sensors in the ground, in the air, in the water, measuring the most important outcome data points in real time, all the time. And so you can have a dashboard with a camera. And what will that do for transparency and trust in the eco-credit markets? It'll transform it, because people in the cities and people online can go kick the tires and see the data, and that these devices are calibrated and that they're verified, and that it's sort of a leapfrog of our capacity to show what we're talking about and what we're doing. And I've been surprised in the selling how little people care about Verra or Gold Standard. What they care about most is the story. They love that it's local, but they just want to make sure they're doing the right thing. And if we can give them that threshold of the regen certified or whatever regen, so this is a list of the different, there's literally an orb where we can measure soil health in the ground, soil organic matter. It's brand new. Air quality, all greenhouse gases, satellite. There's all these different sensors that we're tracking. We'd love to hear more. And so I came on Hilo and I asked a bunch of questions. How do we shift the agreement to transact for buyers to have enough social cover to go beyond tons of carbon? My thing is to get the government involved. Well, what if we don't get the government to fully embrace it because they're afraid of a new thing? How do we embrace that? Or do we go to a new city? What's the best way to test out an urban bounty? And how do we get this on regen quickly with our pilot? And our pilot is a 26-acre site where we're going to plant fruit and nut trees. It has a bunch of information here, but it's a lot, of like, okay, legalese type language, like what exactly are we going to do with the seed mix and stuff like that. But the big picture of the pilot is it's 26 acres. It's currently being mowed, which half of our cities are being mowed right now, and they don't need to be. Every single highway Department of Transportation is being mowed. We don't need to do that. So there's so much land here that we can mess with. And so the idea is to plant fruit nut trees, native grasses and flowers, and do rotational grazing. But that doesn't really show you the capacity of the system, because I think the ideal is that we do this credit bank. And so if you're reducing heat in an urban center where people are suffering from heat stroke and deaths and all these things, we can actually reduce the temperature in that area. And so that would be the baseline, and the intervention is we're planting, we're putting green roofs on the, bus stops. We're painting things white so that the, what's the word? There's a fancy word for that, but we're reducing the albedo, the albedo of the reflectivity of the ground. And so what I really want, I'm not going to say Kansas City is, I would say it's a 50-50 chance that they're going to fully embrace it, or they're just not going to understand and it's not going to work, because it is very new. And I don't want, my business partner invented LEED certification for buildings, and he says this could be bigger than LEED. And so I don't want to let, I think we're willing to, if we could get a city or a country to fully embrace it, then I feel like we'll be in really good shape, because we'll be able to show those results. And so city, individuals, businesses can buy into this credit marketplace. And I do feel like it is a tangible approach to getting more climate action finance and implemented. And so with that, that's that I would really appreciate people helping us answer those questions either now or in Hilo, and just kind of helping us think about, feel free to look at the paper. It's fully open source, so if you want to take this and do it where you are, like, go for it. We'd be really happy about that, because I do think one of the biggest things that I've learned is the politicians. We need them to buy into this, but they also have the ability to, derail it. And so how do I navigate that is one of my biggest questions. So thank you so much, and looking forward to the conversation.
Sorry, I have a clarification question, if I got that right. So you want to create a portfolio, like, you basically, for the climate action plan, there is a portfolio being created where you're buying eco credits from multiple registries and retiring it based on the customers you get that basically compensate, and at the same time you want to mint your own using that plot that you have described in that other document with like different seed mixes and stuff. Did I get that right?
Yes. And the idea is that right now they're buying normal carbon credits, but soon they'll be buying the new type of credit that we're creating.
And I was briefly there at the last Regenerati Twitter call. I was there for like 10 minutes when you were speaking, and then I had to drop off again. But I heard that carbon credits is what this is gonna be around, but that is not exactly what you want to be doing, because you also want to see like what are the buying trends and work with it. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? Because I would have wanted to hear, but I had to, yeah.
What was the part?
I just entered where you were speaking something about um that you are looking at the market, and the credits that is going to be minted out of this pilot is going to be surrounded around carbon, but that is necessarily not your ultimate vision.
Yes. So the carbon is hard to do in cities. The reason why most carbon credits are like in massive fields, in like, you need like hundreds of, at least 300 acres to do a carbon credit. I'm doing 26 acres. Somebody's got an urban lot of not even 1 acre. How do we do that for carbon credits? But at the same time, understanding that cities are full of emissions and problems related to climate. And so carbon is not the right, it's not the right measure of a gas. We can include carbon, but I think the right thing is to just turn the entire climate action plan list of the things we need to do to solve climate, which is what all the government said, into a bank of credits. So the credit is more about tied to the climate action plan, not just carbon, because there's all kinds of things that have nothing to do with carbon in terms of risk of like flooding, heat, in terms of just you can look at the plans and see. And so that's kind of where we're headed. That's where we're headed. I'll go to David, then Shayla.
Going and Tran. I was checking out the doc and finish it, but I'll definitely go over it fully and drop some comments as well. I have a quick question. What tools to members go flights, diet plans and all? I was just wondering, you used to calculate the
David,
Yeah.
sorry, you're breaking in and out.
or is it
I think you're saying
yeah, I'm not
what-
sure if you heard my question, but that was pretty much
if you go through this it will ask you, if you like click through, it will give you an opportunity, like what are all the questions, but it's your how many times do you fly a year, how far, what are your sort of miles per year, your diet. We use a free Berkeley tool, which we can send to you. We just basically handhold people through it. And it's sort of robust enough, but not crazy complicated enough where we can do it in 15 minutes on the phone with someone.
yeah, I think that was my question. I think that would be awesome to like check it out as well. If you could send it over, that would be really great.
Yeah.
The chat.
Shayla.
Yeah, super amazing work. It's like a lot of similarities to what I'm trying to do with the records of regeneration for Chama DAO and my project here in Kenya. And I wanted to answer your question, but answer it from a Kenyan context. In East Africa, for a lot of our countries where the government has consistently failed us, we just don't wait for the government, we just do it. So I think that's the first thing, like if you get enough people to start getting these measurements, you get enough people to on board, and you get enough people to actually be interested, then the government's going to have to be forced to do it. So I think that's my answer from my lens, but I think it can also like very easily be applied to you. And yeah, kudos on the work you're doing. I would love to read I saw your post on Hilo, and I've been meaning to read it, so I'll read it and leave any comments, but well done.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I part of me wants to just kind of do it anyways. We are doing it anyways. I just know that it would be so much easier if they were to embrace it, and it would create so much clarity. But yeah, I mean, I understand. Yeah, that's also that might be our path forward for sure. But I do think that cities and countries are trying to create a competitive edge in the world. And this could be one for a progressive, innovative city or country. And so I'm trying, like, if there were someone who's like going to roll out the red carpet and just let us do this thing, like with all the power and, and rollout that they can deliver, I mean, that would be ideal because, so yeah. Breno and Karnik after.
Hey, Brian. Really nice your presentation. Very happy to see the development that you have a paper, some information there. That's really good. Also, considering urban action, that it's important. Also another thing that you say, I think it's interesting, is that the carbon can really be measured in many ways if this is the necessity, right? So not just in the terms of planting trees, but social aspect and ecosystem management, for example. And yeah, just to add this, that I really enjoy it, and that I'm in Brazil. Now I'm not in Brazil, I'm in the Netherlands, but I'm based in Brazil. And there, I'm an educator on agroforestry, and we are also doing some movement in the city. So, for instance, now in December, January, I'm doing a plot in my city, and there was like some business that they want to see the action. I think, this whole impact market, it's about seeing the action going. So yeah, we figure out, we know everything is very slow right now, and we never know when something will really happen, but we manage it with some local shops and this kind of thing. We have been managing to create plots and to bring awareness. So I mean, me as an educator, I think that the path goes a lot about learning. So not in the city, as we don't have much space. So creating also learning spaces can create some impact, and hopefully it can be traded in a bank or in a model like the one that you're presenting, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, so thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What about you, Karnik?
Yeah, so first of all, it sounds like a superb idea, especially for the Southeast Asian countries where the population is still large and like the big main carbon projects, they are definitely not applicable because they require a huge area and people have very less lands. Kind of question is based on that. So suppose there are two groups. So two household basically. One household is kind of, let's just say, doing back practices or is not much carbon neutral or carbon positive, and they are shifting their practices from your interventions, right? The other group is which is already been, you can say, either carbon positive or neutral or doing good practice for some years. So whether those who are transforming from bad to good, they are only like getting something, or those who are kind of doing very good things for over the last maybe few years, they are also getting. And if in the both case, what's the kind of difference? Because just to see in the current market practices related to carbon, those who are shifting from bad to good, they are getting beneficial, not
Mm.
those who are doing the good practices from very years. So
Yeah, I mean, at least what I found is in almost every situation, including the people who are perceived as the best case, like they might have solar on their home or drive an EV, they're still carbon negative, meaning the modern lifestyle as a baseline, at least in America, like it may be very different in other parts of the world, but it probably is. How do you see the overshoot day where like in like August, we've consumed already our planet basically in terms of our resources. So at least the status quo here is that I haven't found anybody who we look at their footprint and we say, you're good because you have solar and just the modern lifestyle as it is something where they need to do something now. And over time, because they're paying money, they'll make those adjustments because they're literally having to pay money. And so they're like, okay, I installed a new hot water heater. What is my calculation now? Because they want it to go down. And so, and I don't know that the neighborhoods, like a good versus bad, neither one of them are, I would say, benefiting. The only people that are benefiting is the project developers, because they're the ones who are being paid. Everyone else it's kind of like it's like a unrealized debt. We have $1 billion debt in the climate action plan that hasn't been funded, and nobody's stepped up to pay it. And we're going to pay it through a natural disaster of $1 billion. And so it's kind of like that's what there's going to be a lot of companies that fail because they're not they're not doing appropriate risk management around what's going to happen. So I guess that's my best answer for what you said at the
Yeah.
moment.
I think this topic is kind of like can have a whole discussion for an hour. Yeah.
For sure.
Oh,
Nandini?
thanks, man. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for your presentation. I had a question. Maybe I've missed this, and I don't also have a lot of context about carbon credits. But I was wondering, does your model account for the income strata that you are a part of and where you come from,
Yeah. So
the
we
location?
are, yeah, we are targeting people that have at least $100,000 in income. We're not going to the more vulnerable parts of town. We're more interested in scholarshiping them in. So we've had a couple people, oh, I'll pay for myself to go carbon positive and somebody else. But, you know, we're mostly focused on the people that can buy it, right? Because and trying to scholarship other people in. And I think that the other folks can be the project developers. They can be the gig economy workers. They can be sponsored in. So that's, and originally we really wanted to, because we wanted to hire young people at risk to be the salespeople. And that's still our intention. Although, because sales is an incredibly transferable skill, and our director of sales had like 80 people under him once, you know, at a previous company, and so he can, you know, these kids could learn this, and then they could go get a, you know, $80,000 a year job doing sales, which is huge. And so we're seeing that as, but in the area we're focused, the places that have the most ecological, economic, and social decline are the areas that are most placed to benefit from these projects because of the way Kansas City is. It's just like, it's the largest city in terms of geographic size, and there's so much land that's just sitting there being mowed and underutilized, like land bank stuff. And so we're hoping that we can encourage them to become the project developers or the sales folks or the gig economy workers that are planting the trees. And we do have a sister company that's a farmer-owned company, like a BIPOC farmer-owned company, that when we're doing our projects, that's who we're paying. And they want to train more farmers, and they want to help them get their own land. And so there's like a whole element there. Yay. Kennedy.
Thank you, Brian, for that presentation. I think what you guys are doing is really cool. I think it's one of the few projects that I've seen working in the urban space. What comes to mind when I was listening to you are some parallels, especially in terms of you know, what we are doing with farmers over at Shamba who have small sizes. So it looks like you have a similar challenge in the urban area with small land sizes for projects. So my question is mainly around DMRV, and I think around how you're doing the measurements. I've seen you shared a really cool sensor for the soil measurements of carbon. And I just wanted to know what the economics look like for you when you're working in a small place and you're deploying some of these sensors. Do you have a situation whereby the sensors, sometimes maybe the cost of the measurements might be more than the credits that are being generated? And also, are you the ones who are setting up these sensors, or is it something that you're working with another party that sets them up for you, provides you with the data, and then you use it? How does that work?
Sorry, the plumber is here. So I'll do my best to answer you. I think I understood the question about how are we measuring it, essentially. In the white paper, I have a list of technologies, and our goal is we want to buy these sensors. like the one I have. So that one right there, it costs $3,000. And we can use that on multiple sites. So their goal is, the holy grail in all this is low cost sensors. And so this is there's a prototype that you can get for $3,000, but what they're working on is even lower than that. Something that somebody in Africa could pay for, you know, for a smallholder situation. And so we are thinking about having on our, like, as assets, all these types of sensors that we can start by periodically measured, but ultimately I want to have them installed onto every site. And so there's a list of the sensors that we're tracking of water quality, air quality, and I have it in the paper. I think that was your question, but there were so that
Yeah.
I hope that,
That
and
answers my question.
there's a lot of stuff. There's bioacoustics, you know, for $250, you can listen to every bird or bat, you know, in an area. So that, you know, there's a moment where leapfrogging in terms of the digital infrastructure, and that piping in as, like I said, a utility network for the measurement, reporting, and verification of these projects is where we're headed.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I'd love to share notes and think about that. We have all the sensors that we're, like, seriously having conversations with is in that paper. And I can repost.
Maybe share the paper, yeah, again, as well here, or on the Telegram group.
Yeah, I
I
think
think-
that list will be very useful, and especially for the rest of us who are also thinking and looking into what sensors we can use on our projects. I think one of the outcomes, or rather one of the positive things with this cohort, is we could potentially share some of the technology, sensors, and things that we're using for our projects, and potentially could be used by other folks elsewhere. Yeah. So thanks, Brian.
Thank you. I'll
Yeah.
post right here and reference the page.
All right. With that, we are at the end of the call. Thank you, Brian, for giving the presentation. I think that brought a lot of collective energy towards the end of the call, which was great. Next week, we will hear more from Nandini and David and Victor. Nandini, Karnik, David, Victor. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. And if you have any logistical questions around anything, please reach out to me and I will try to help you. Okay. Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
I just made the high-low post for
Mhm.
all of you to shill.
Okay. We'll look at it.
right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.